This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Please stay tuned to learn more.
Wrong, now beat it, Pit Stain.
I love it when you use my technique.
Why are you gay?
Guys, what the hell am I doing? This video's talking about an anime that's over 15 years old at this point.
I'm what is known as a YouTube hobo.
Oh yeah, I'm sure this video will do well on YouTube's archaic algorithm.
Oh, my favorite.
You never see it coming. You say that my mind is too fast for eyes.
There are probably two groups of people who are watching this video. The first are people who are fans of the series who are coming to defend it because of the title. The second is probably people who are coming to this video to agree that Yugioh GX is the worst season of Yu-Gi-Oh!
That's right, Poopyhead! My mommy says I'm really strong! You hear me? I take guys like you and eat them for breakfast!
Once again, war crimes building up.
Unfortunately, while the pool of people in both camps might be small, I hate to disappoint, but this video will not be what you're looking for. Yes, you fell into my trap card. Clickbait! Now, before we begin actually talking about GX, I have a confession to make. I got a sponsor! That's right, I've got a sponsor, and now I'm gonna be rolling in so much dough that I could buy enough Yu-Gi-Oh cards that'd make Elon Musk jealous. Well, in my dreams where I fantasize that Elon Musk is a Yu-Gi-Oh fanatic. But I also dream of a world where I can safely purchase Yu-Gi-Oh cards without worrying about going broke. Shame I can't actually do that. But the closest thing I can do is use Surfshark VPN. That's right, Surfshark VPN, a VPN service that'll hide all your precious internet info from the prying eyes of unwanted guests, and allow you to access region-locked content. Got a feeling the government is spying illegally on you?
Get out!
Surfshark VPN will kick him out with the force of Joey Wheeler's chin. What about wanting to see the Netflix show that Netflix said, "Sorry, Baka Gaijin, no anime for you"? Well, Surfshark VPN is about to make like Seto Kaiba pimp slapping them with a wad of cash and telling them,
Screw the rules, I have money.
simply change your virtual location to where the show is available and you can watch it. And by clicking the link down below and entering the promo code MANGA, you get 83% off and 3 months for free. And if you're not satisfied, Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. So what are you waiting for? Go and click the link in the description. Please? I'll let you have my super special secret chocolate-covered secret rare card if you do.
Why not? The sooner I beat you, the less bad dialogue I have to hear.
2,000 years later.
Yugioh GX is a weird beast, especially in comparison to other series of Yu-Gi-Oh that came before and after it. The original Yu-Gi-Oh focused on a pharaoh taking over the body of a young teenage boy, and boy, that sounds kind of weird now that they say it out loud.
It's not a good look for you guys.
In order to regain his memories, as well as save the world using Egyptian gods. So, you know, average high school stuff in Japan. 5Ds had a dystopian future that was ravaged due to an abuse of technology with a class system that split Domino City in two. Oh, and everyone duels on motorcycles. GX? It was a series about going to school to learn how to play a children's card game. Money well spent, Seto Kaiba. Money well spent.
'Cause I figure, if there is intelligent life out there, then let's teach them how to duel.
I'm surprised Kaiba Corp hasn't exploded yet. This video will be going through a number of segments and look towards the reason why GX is what I consider to be a tragic series. A little side note though, I won't be bringing up things like, the cards don't work this way. Because not only have cards in the anime been changed before their counterpart was actually released, many times a lot of the cards hadn't been released to the public yet, and not really worth all that much time, especially when there's not really a criticism. So let's throw down a face down and get your game on! My god, what have I done?
Gay!
Are there barf bags on this flight?
Let's face it, probably the biggest reason for why GX is seen as one of the worst seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is because of the dub.
Duel. Oh, great. Who knew they could sing?
The dub for the show was made by 4Kids, or 4K Media. And we all know how well they like to dub things.
Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
So, you know there's going to be some tampering with the original source material here and there, just so it can appeal to a much younger demographic. And that's really an issue in that regard. Look, stuff like in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Had the same issue, namely the Shadow Realm. Whenever a character would be severely injured or died, they would be sent to the Shadow Realm. My favorite was the Dark Energy Disc with Arcana. I guess when you got little kids watching, you don't want them to attempt the same thing with actual buzzsaws and cut off their legs at the ankles. Little ankle biters. But the thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! Was that it was a lot more natural. That being said, there are a number of things in GX that really get kneecapped in the dub.
Points fall to 0, then it's game over. And you get sent away, straight to the stars.
To the stars?
And then there are just some questionable choices. Here's an example. Early in the show, there's a scene where Alexis, the female lead, and her friends are in a bathhouse, and we see them being depicted wearing swimsuits. Kinda weird when you consider that this is a bathhouse and you're doing it to, you know, clean yourself. Who the frig wears a swimsuit while showering? But totally understandable in that regard though. These are teenage girls and you wouldn't want to depict or imply nudity in a kid's show, cause that can land you in jail! However, the editing is then screwed up a few minutes later when we see the two girls who are in the bath come out in nothing but towels. Oops. Now, that's just a small example of how the editing was bad, but later in the second part of the show, there's a scene involving Zane Truesdale, one of the major characters, having lost his career in professional dueling. And there's a scene where he's in the shower. Straight up, no editing, just full-on showering with the implication that he's nude. Okay, apparently it's okay to imply nudity for guys, but girls? Pfft, sexism at its finest! To be frank, I'm just ranking on the dub's choice in editing. Then there's the editing that actively hurts the story. Take, for example, in the original, Aster's father was dead. And I understand why. You can't show a person being killed, especially in a show that's being shown to kids. Although...
Aster, help us! It's me, Daddy! Father! Yup, that's him alright.
I don't know, maybe put like a Dragon Ball Z clip here?
Oh my god!
They could have done something a little different, like, say... My father was injured and has been in a coma ever since, much like how the same thing was done in the original. It would have saved a lot more time in the editing department and not make it goofy. That being said, there are times when the dub's changes from the Japanese version are just bad. I already brought up the "to the stars" whenever someone would die, but the problem with the dub, while it can be tongue-in-cheek, can be extremely memeable. It's not really the greatest. For example, during the later seasons, for some reason they gave one of my favorite characters, Chaz Princeton, and screw you for that name, one of the weirdest voices. Here's what his first voice was.
Hey, Alexis. Have you come to watch me mop the floor with my new little friend Jaden here? Later.
Enough! Leave me alone! Who cares if he's richer than me? And so what if he's more powerful?
I'm sorry, when did Chaz decide he was suddenly Batman? And of course, there's also the fact that we never got Season 4 dubbed. Although, funnily enough, while I was doing some research, apparently 4K Media still owns the world license for the 4th season. But they haven't done a damn thing with it! Yes, they own the rights to the 4th season for an anime that's over 15 years old, but apparently aren't doing anything with it. Even going so far as to stop fans from fandubbing it with a lawsuit. Most people haven't even seen the 4th season, and we're left on a cliffhanger because the inane choice to stop GX at Season 3. 4Kids, even in death, you suck!
Nice.
I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the soundtrack. Now, shock of all shocks, I like both the dubbed and the original Japanese, although for different reasons. The dub's music has a basis in guitar, and it certainly does play the series' energy and fun times. That being said, there are plenty of times when the heavy music doesn't really fit. And not to mention, when the theme song is used, it just doesn't have that same oomph as it does for me for other shows. The Japanese tracks had a bit more of an unorthodox feel to them, and had more variety, as it were. Like, take a listen to the Japanese theme for the main character, Yuki Judai. While not as powerful as the dub theme, it still plays to Judai's character if you ask me. Being playful and empowering, it really fits the character well, especially when he does something dynamic. Also, funnily enough, Duel Links actually remastered the Japanese theme. I'm not really a fan of when dubs replace the entire soundtrack for an anime. To me, it just seems like a waste of money for something that could potentially kill the mood for scenes. Like, not too long ago, I was actually watching the dub for Bleach recently. Yeah, throw your tomatoes at me, but part of the reason why the show worked so well back in the day for me was due to it keeping its original Japanese soundtrack. To me, having a brand new soundtrack seems like a waste of money when it comes to dubbing shows. Unless there was a licensing issue, 4Kids seems to waste money with this series. Weird choices in editing, the waste of a new soundtrack. Honestly, the reasons for why Season 4 weren't aired in the US are unknown, but I will talk about my theories later. But I like to think, and I'll go into more depth in this later, it was because 5Ds was out for a while in Japan and that the series had to be pushed out to show off the new cards. But hey, that's just a theory! A game—
Stop right there, criminal scum!
He's a lot of booty.
I beg your pardon?
One of the biggest issues that I've seen that people have with the series is the stark contrast with the surrounding series and GX in comparison. GX followed Yuki Judai, and yes, I'm using Japanese names because I can, screw you, as he goes to Duel Academia to become the next king of games. And hijinks ensue. The concept is pretty out there, an entire school just to become a pro duelist for a children's card game. It seems extremely far-fetched, especially since considering that this takes place as a sequel to the original Duel Monsters. And that had a bit more of a grounded reality to it. I said a bit more grounded. Elon Musk, eat your heart out! Really, if you think about it, it's not really all that outlandish of a concept. Saving the world with a children's card game is pretty tame considering what other animes we have, especially nowadays. You know, things like having teenagers pilot giant mech suits to save the world, people dying and being resurrected with JRPG elements, stealing people's hearts to change the world. This is tame in comparison. I think the main issue with GX is that it's an entire school dedicated to a children's card game that gets people a little hot under the collar, and frankly, I don't blame them. Mainly due to the fact if you've ever played the game, and you ever bought a structure deck, you get a bloody small book that tells you how to play the game. Let's see, do I want to spend possibly thousands of dollars to send my kid to an island paradise so they can learn how to play a card game? Or do I want to spend $10 to buy them a structure deck so they can learn from home? Funny enough, if you actually play this card game, you probably would pay thousands of dollars just to get a decent deck nowadays.
That's what it's all about. Woo!
I know that I'm harping on the series premise, but this was something that always bugged me as well. Like, does the school teach basics in math, science, regular high school stuff? We see the characters in class, sometimes, but at best the only other things we see them learn outside of dueling is gym class and an alchemy lesson. Yeah, not kidding on that. It's just weird to see the premise of this series, especially after it's a more grounded predecessor, which had the characters starting out in class at various points in time, and Yugi's more iconic outfit was more of a standard Japanese uniform. And considering that the show was set in the exact same world, albeit a few years later, it's weird to consider that in the few years between both series that a kind of school like this would even exist. Not even that, there are plenty of other schools too, but whatever. For the sake of the plot, we'll ignore that. Let's talk about the class system in GX. Yes, there is a class system between the Slifer Reds, the Raw Yellows, and Obelisk Blues. You can really see Kaiba's ego here because Obelisk Blues were considered to be the best of the best, even though Obelisk the Tormentor is probably the weakest of the Egyptian god cards, and he's essentially giving Yugi the middle finger here. One of the major themes is the class system, where there's an obvious snobbish behavior from the higher-ups in the academy. You see, among the students and people who are visiting the island, that they believe that the Obelisk Blues are the best of the best. And yet, consistently, we're shown that the Obelisk Blues, well, suck. The only character who we actually see as competent is Ryo, the Kaiser of the Academy who represents the best of the best. The idea is to give that the class systems don't really matter, it's skill and how you use that skill. That's why Judai is always a red student, the lowest of the low. It's a good message and theme that's pretty cool. It's only hampered by the fact that Judai typically wins not with actual strategy, but with lucky draws that he pulls out of nowhere. Kinda downplays the argument that class doesn't matter when your main character's main strength is luck. Don't get me wrong, there are times when Judai does show some skill, especially considering how jank the E-heroes were back in the early days of their introduction to the game. But when your MC is in the dueling spotlight for so much, it really makes the cracks in the show be seen really easily. The first season deals with what's called the Shadow Riders, a basic team of bad guys who are stealing keys for a guy named Kagemaru who apparently is looking for an indecent exposure lawsuit to be slapped onto those pecs.
You violated the law!
Really, Season 1 was the basic season to set the characters as well as establish their roles. Judai was the main character, Ryo was the top dog of the academy, Manjome, was the hot-headed rival, Daichi Misawa was the brains, Sho was the scaredy cat, and Asuka was the girl of the group. That last one is kind of sad because I kind of really do like Asuka, and in the series she's got a good track record as a duelist, a lot more confident than Mai and Miss Friendship. But the problem with Asuka lies in how they portray her.
Oh, great. Just my luck. The one time I forget to pack my bikini.
Oh no! In the Japanese version, most of her development comes from her losing her brother at Duel Academy, mysteriously, but other than that, most of her personality is, well, as interesting as dried toast. And in the dub, well, it's obvious that they're trying to pair Alexis with Jaden.
Impressed? I think I'm in love.
You're sweet. Too bad I have to crush you.
Even more so than the original Japanese version. And outside of being a strong character, there isn't really too much to say about her. Which is a shame because I like Asuka. But if hard pressed, she doesn't really have much development in the first 3 seasons, and her development in the final is just so rushed. Hell, in the second season, she's pretty much brainwashed by an entire cult. But really, it's kind of been a problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! And how they'll handle the female leads. Even my favorite female lead in Yu-Gi-Oh! Gets the shaft by one of the most bland characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! History. Fuck you, Crow! And don't get me started on the sexualization of, You know, I'm probably gonna stop right there, because even though I don't want to talk about Zexal, it's kind of creepy how they actually sexualize, the female lead. She's supposed to be in frickin' middle school. God damn it! And I understand that Yu-Gi-Oh!'s demographic is mostly teenage boys and such, which is kind of why the anime has a bit more of a prominent with female characters. Although, funny thing about that last pair, apparently it's connected to a vampire!
No, I'm not sure about that one. I don't know if that checks out.
Yep. Apparently, vampires are canon in the Yugiverse. And unfortunately, after the encounter with this vampire lady, no one ever wants to bring up that little fact! She just shows up for a few episodes, then gets killed off by having her soul sucked out of her body. Well, thanks for bringing that into the mix and not bothering to realize the implications of that apparently being vampires in the world's history. You have just given the hundreds of fanfic writers who for some reason turned the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cast into vampires some actual messed up logic as to how this can actually work for them.
They're not vampires.
Although considering that there's also aliens in this universe, what? And apparently, you can be turned into a dinosaur and a talking car! Alright, so we've got vampires, Amazons, aliens, ancient magic, technology that turns you into other things, and frickin' demons! Ugh. I think I found a bit of a flaw with GX. There's a lot in the pot they put there.
A mystery chef versus a sergeant wannabe.
Another typical day.
Oh, and just to point something out, all those things can be tamed with a children's card game. Oh look, Elemental Hero Neos is the Guyver. Really though, in later seasons when we get introduced to the Society of Light, which I think is a bit of a much more structured plot if you ask me, with a good chunk of the cast being brainwashed, the Season 3 junk that basically made me wonder if the writers are on crack. And Season 4, oh, that gets its own segment, boys and girls! The weirdest thing about this show would actually be the characters. Not that I don't like the characters, it's just that this is one of those shows that has a ton of characters to it, and they eventually fall to the wayside. And no, I'm not talking about the one-shot duelists who show up, I'm actually talking about the main cast. Although, you probably could make a few funny jokes about the one-shot duelists. You've got Tarzan, you've got a stoner, you've got a dueling monkey. Oh my god, Kaiba. I know you don't like Joey, but why the frick did you name the monkey Wheeler?
He's an asshole.
Let it go, dude! Anyway, the first thing to point out is that the problem stems from the fact that Judai is pretty much made into the main star of the show and how everyone depends on him. Let me put it like this. During the Shadow Rider arc, only 3 of the main characters given keys that they are given to defend against the Shadow Riders actually won a duel. They would be Judai, Manjome, Asuka. Ryo The best duelist on the island, and the only character at this point to actually beat Judai, loses. Yeah, he did lose because Camula is a cheating bitch, but still. Kronos, and yes, I am aware how butt ugly he is, loses. Misawa, the analytical duelist and best in Raw Yellow, and funnily enough, my favorite character in the show, loses. And all of the opponents they lost to, they lose to Judai. Now, I've got nothing against characters losing fights. It doesn't make the characters bad in my eyes, and the characters lose all the time. However, when your cast is essentially becoming a literal cheer squad for the main character, I do have an issue with that. Judai is pretty much made into the golden goose of the series, and I honestly can't blame people who don't like the character. Hell, in the dub, they gave him some of the most cringe-inducing catchphrases.
Get your game on.
It's almost on par with Naruto's.
Believe it!
Now, to make it clear, I'm not saying the characters don't have development. Manjome's character development in the first season was amazing, where we see this antagonistic prick who is willing to cheat in order to maintain his status, and he changes into, well, he's still pretty much an egotistical prick, but at the very least, you got to see him deal with his brother's expectations and pressures and how he wanted to have his own identity. And to see him go through his trials and tribulations, it was actually pretty interesting to see this character be brought down to the ground and still manage to come out on top. He's also a character with one of the weirdest deck combinations you'd ever seen, and he somehow makes it work. And he does it with style!
You ugly.
The mystery surrounding Asuka and her missing brother did have a lot of good potential for the character as well. It was a very personal motivation for the character and one that the audience actually got to learn about rather quickly in the show's early life. And with the reveal of her brother becoming one of the antagonists, aka one of the Shadow Riders in the show, it made for a fun little twist. Doesn't hurt that her brother was, well...
Wow, I'm touched, but I can't take your medals. I mean, I've already stolen your hearts. It's a stampede!
Hey, I still stand by the fact that the dub is actually pretty entertaining. Although I feel so bad for the girls who had their boobs removed. So sad. Now, the problem I have with this show is that it detriments the non-main characters to the point where they get replaced. We first get this in Season 2, when we're introduced to Tyranno Kenzan. Or, as some people like to know, and I actually like the name,
Sergeant Hasselberry reporting for duty. These two here are my subordinates. Yeah, in your dreams. Isn't that cute?
But it's wrong!
Now, I like the Dino guy, and I'm not going to complain about having a more standout character amongst this cast of steak-thin Pallades. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. You're probably shaking your head right now, aren't you, Kaiser? I can't see you if you're doing it, but I know you are. Anyway, Tyranno's an awesome design, and honestly, I love dinosaurs as a deck concept, so I sure as hell ain't gonna complain about the character himself.
Chocholos! Well then, it's no soup for you. Don't threaten me, Pops.
What I will complain about is how he essentially takes the role from Misawa, and basically turns the character into a running joke with how he'll be made into an exposition dumper until he leaves the show for the rest of the season. You wanna know how Misawa leaves? I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get banned off YouTube at this rate, but yep! He rips off his clothes and runs off into the sunset butt naked! First, I'm surprised how jacked Misawa actually is, and secondly, we do get a full-on ass shot in the Japanese version. But in the dub, Misawa's stripping scene is still there, but he's wearing his boxers.
Like the butterfly sheds his cocoon, I must shed my past. Can't he do that with pants on?
This is how you get rid of a character, folks! It's both amazing and terrible at the same time, and it makes me conflicted so much! Mainly because you've got arguably one of the smartest characters on the show being broken down and him effectively leaving the show until the next season, where he'll disappear again. But really, this problem shows up even more when we're introduced to the 4 new characters in Season 3. Johan Anderson, Jim Crocodile, Austin O'Brien, and Amon Garam. Garam Maragarasanam. Throughout the season, we'll get more and more focus on these characters, with Judai forming quite the bond with Johan, to the point where Johan disappearing is the driving force that has Judai search for him to the detriment of most of his other friends. Like, dude, I mean, when you essentially kill off 2 of the original cast, and then 2 other characters who have been with the show for at least a season and a half, what am I supposed to think here? And yes, I'm aware that the characters come back at the end of the season, but this is really an off-putting aspect of GX for me, where we're given the spotlight to the newer side characters and cast aside the older characters. And don't get me wrong, I like all the characters, for the most part, but this is really disrespectful to the characters that people came to love and saw them go through various hells. Although I will say in the dub, Adrian, Amon, he does have some of the best lines. Especially since he likes to break the fourth wall.
Watch this! I reveal 2 of my face downs! But how? Easy. I just call out their names dramatically and they pop up.
Haven't you played this game before?
I'm touching myself tonight.
Oh, right. I should probably bring up the biggest issue I have with GX's cast. Ray, or Blair Ray, is 11 years old. She is also probably the most annoying character in GX for me. Her basic motivation at the start is about love. She wants to get into the academy because of love. And she basically becomes pretty useless throughout the story, save for being a damsel in distress at one point. Throw in the messed up logic of how she looks the way she does and is only 11 years old, it really leaves a nasty taste in my mouth. Why did they do this? I know that Japan has some very questionable morals when it comes to the ages of characters, but god damn it! What the fuck?
Bit of a correction, okay? Hi guys, Kaiserpool here. She's actually 11 in the debut for her, in the Japanese version. When she shows up again, she's 13. So, you know, that's Japan and their age of consent. So they gave her a bit of a glow up, I guess. Still fucking creepy as goddamn sin, though.
And apparently she's supposed to be a really good duelist. Too bad we didn't see this in any of that. It's a basic show don't tell. Only tell. Just tell. Why are you showing me anything? You're supposed to tell me this stuff.
My home is this garbage can!
And this leads into the biggest issue I have with GX as a whole. The season that wasn't actually brought to America. Mainly because 5Ds was coming out soon in Japan, and 4Kids was like, nope. We gotta keep them kids' attention and get them brand new single cards so else we can help Konami get their monies out. And that's one of the worst things that can happen to a franchise, that their final season, the season that's full of character growth, actually wrapping up arcs and answering loose questions from the previous season, is skipped! Way to go, 4Kids! It's not like this didn't happen with 5Ds either, like, yeesh! If you're not gonna dub the whole thing, what's even the point? At least pass off the rights of the anime to a company that actually cares about its consumers and won't do pointless censoring! Anyway, since Season 4 was Japanese only, I'll levy my criticisms at that. And to note, and I shouldn't have to say this, but the characters are practically different beasts from their English counterparts, as we've already talked about. In this season, Judai went from a more upbeat personality to someone who was a bit more dark and brooding. His outlook on life became a tad bit more sour, with him actually distancing himself from his friends due to the events in Season 3. Which is understandable when you're under the assumption that you were the cause of a lot of your friends' deaths. Which, you know, is good. It offers self-reflection and a form of growth for the character. That being said, one of the reasons that Season 4 is kinda bad is because it tries to cram way too much into a very short season. Some of it is kind of contradicting too. Like, you have Asuka trying to come to terms with her feelings with Judai, but nothing came out of it. She tried to confess, but nothing happened. Ugh. And you got Manjome getting a taste of the dueling pro life and coming to terms that he shouldn't sell himself just for a taste of fame and fortune. Although I will say I do like Oja Manjome. Sho gets to step out of Ryo's shadow, taking his brother's deck and working hard to be his own duelist, not the little brother of the Kaiser. There was good development for these characters. However, in that regard, why isn't it only happening in the final season? These sorts of arcs should have happened over the course of the entire series, but then again, with Season 3, things focused on more Judai and the newer characters. Oh, we're learning about Amon Garam? Too bad he doesn't show up in the 4th season, he pretty much dies! So why did we spend so much time with these characters that we're not gonna see? Season 4 has its issues. They're probably worth their own video on the matter, but needless to say, it was a bit rushed, especially with all the characterization that should have been developed for the supporting cast. Another issue is Kaiser Ryo, or Hell Kaiser Ryo. Shows bro, yo! I feel sick now for saying that. Anyway, there was a bit of an ongoing portion of Ryo, where he fell into darkness, became a duelist that was ruthless, to the point where you'd have to wear these shock colors that would send electricity through people's bodies whenever they lost life points in a duel, and he used it on his brother! But because he was using that a lot, he was developing a heart condition that sadly would kill him if he continued on this path. Hell, even regular dueling began to hurt him. However, due to the events of Season 3, he's searching for the perfect duel, and believes that the main antagonist of the season, Yubel, is the best one for that. Yubel's like a whole thing, and if this video does anywhere well, I'll be glad to talk about Yubel, but not for this video. Anyway, watching Zane go from Season 1 where he's an honorable duelist to Season 2 where he's broken down by the real world's cruelty, watching him claw his way back up to the top of his game where he was scarred by said cruelty, and watching him suffer because of that, it was extremely powerful, and it made him one of the most interesting characters of the entire show. Season 3 was his highlight. Having found out that he's practically dying, Ryo spends most of the season searching for one last great duel. However, he also repeatedly saves his brother's life and encourages him not to give up on Judai. He snaps Judai out of a funk with his heroic sacrifice against Yubel and abandons most of the harsh and sadistic persona that he displayed in Season 2. When Judai realizes how sick Kaiser is and tries to take over the duel with Yubel, Ryo refuses to let him interfere. He knows he's dying, but he doesn't need or want to be rescued or pitied. It was a very strong character moment, followed up with this. Going out in a blaze of glory, Ryo summons his greatest monster with quadruple attack points and takes the 4k point damage from Power Bond instead of allowing Yubel to take him out. In a sense, committing seppuku. In a way. When it's over, he uses his last few moments to encourage Judai and to tell Sho he's proud of him. It was a great death scene for a character with amazing development and truly made me cry when I watched this sacrifice the first time, especially in Japanese. His death also has an ironic twist to it. Power Bond's side effect, which he once admonished Sho for disregarding, is a wonderful twist that Ryo doesn't forget or disregard. He knows he's out of time, and he would rather leave a shining image of Cyber and Dragon as a symbol of his resolve than let Yubel kill him. And Power Bond was an important card way back in Season 1, so it had a looping effect. It was sad, and it was a perfect ending for this character. So let's just say he survived that in Season 4, shall we?
I have crippling depression.
Yeah, so all that heroic sacrifice? Thanks, GX! Like, as a fan of the character, I'm glad Ryo's alive, but with all that build-up and such, it just comes off as wasted! Especially considering the plot that it's used for in Sho's development episodes, you literally could have had Ryo dead and still have the same story going on! That isn't to say the whole of Season 4 is bad. Despite my complaints with how cramped it is, Season 4 had a lot of highlights. I do like how a lot of the arcs for the characters ended. It's just that the road towards that conclusion for them was really clunky in my opinion, and we could have stand to have more focus on the original crew during that time. It also portrayed Judai in a light we hadn't seen, as I already said. He's changed with his encounter with Yubel in the Supreme King story. Judai is sad, disappointed, and struggling to find his way through adulthood. It was a stark contrast from how Judai was in the previous seasons, and seeing him wallow in despair and slowly crawl out of the events of Season 3, where a lot of messed up shit happened, something like that will affect anyone, and seeing the character who, throughout most of the first few seasons, was the most outgoing character and was excited to fight against powerful duelists, and seeing him break down, it was a great deconstruction. Then again, Judai's life was really weird, so...
Hey, fish brat, can you talk?
Hello, motherfucker.
Season 4 had some very intriguing duels. Probably one of my favorites is Judai vs. Kronos, a duel that has Kronos, the teacher, preventing his students from advancing and graduating because he grew attached to them, and learns that he has to let them go once he duels against Judai. And it also has Judai enjoying dueling again. Or the extremely messed up duel between Austin and Truman, where Truman, basically the big baddie of the season, is disguised as his father. And brought up the messed up past at Austin, where he had to choose between saving his father or mother in a car crash. Season 4 was a weird ride. And unfortunately, we will never know if there will be an official dubbing of GX Season 4. And we won't even know the official answer. I can only speculate. But if you were to ask me, it was a combination of the darker tones in the season along with Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds being released in Japan, mainly to keep up with card sales, and unfortunately they did the same thing with 5Ds, which also had the same thing going on with a darker storyline in it. Thanks, 4Kids, your descent in stupidity is clearly admirable, is what I'd say if you didn't get on the tail of a group of fandubbers who wanted to dub the 4th season. Seriously, fuck 4Kids, they're not even doing anything with the property. Fuck copyright. Fuck this world. Fuck!
Oh no. Somebody's going to get an email.
Yugioh GX is a weird show, and yet I love it. I think it's probably my favorite incarnation of Yu-Gi-Oh! I obviously have my issues with it, but all in all, I find the show endearing despite its flaws. And I think that's something that speaks to the testament of how despite its flaws, people can like something, despite if it's goofy, terrible, overextending, and you get the point. I like Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts. If you like this video, I'd like to talk more about GX in some regard. Maybe I'll talk about the seasons individually and talk about themes and such. So, tell me what you guys think. Give me your thoughts down below on MangaKamen, and remember to examine your fandom. I want to thank Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video, and guys, don't forget to check out the description below to check out their services and get 83% off when you use my promo code MANGA. Thanks again, guys!
Yeah! Chaz, you knew she can't carry a tune.
You gotta know when to hold them, soldier.